Good evening and welcome to Information Please, your Peoria Public Library on the air, bringing you information about your library and your community. And I'm very excited this evening. I have one of our famous local storytellers, Linda Lowery, who's put some of her enchanting stories down on paper so we can enjoy them all the time and not have to wait for her to show up somewhere. Linda.
Thanks.
I've always enjoyed your storytelling and attended, quite a few of your things over the years. And so you have a brand new book out and you have one that came out a while ago, and I'm excited to tell people about them.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
What's the title of this one? We're going to show a picture of it, but what's this one that you just came out with?
Murder in the Library.
All right. Any specific library?
No. I've worked in libraries 41 years now, so I guess if you took them all and screwed them up and messed them up, then that would be this one.
Yeah, made your perfect library for murder out of all your experiences.
Isn't every library?
It is. It is. Well, libraries are interesting. As a visitor, they are always fascinating, but when you work there and you see the underbelly of the library world, that's a whole different deal.
True. I tried to take some of those stories and made them a lot more exciting than they actually were. So,
sure.
Little poetic license there.
Yeah. Are these based on fact, or are these just things that you invented, inspired by facts?
Years ago, I started a blogging every Saturday morning when I had to work on Saturday mornings by myself, and a Saturday morning at the library. And I would talk about, because it was always spooky by yourself, about the ghosts in the library and everything. So I decided that wouldn't it be really exciting if there were a ghost in the library, if there were axe murderers waiting around the stacks and things. And anybody who's worked in a quiet building will find those things that can really wake up the imagination. So.
Oh yeah, there's lots of creaks and groans and things you don't hear ordinarily, and then there's the thing that falls off the shelf, which is probably from a big truck rumbling by, but you can't see or hear the big truck, you just know the book fell down. So.
Right.
So
and
much
it's a lot
going on.
easier to explain, to say there's somebody else knocking those books off the shelf than,
Yeah.
wayward children.
So now you told me this is 3 short stories?
Yes. The way I started on this is I joined a local writing group, and with the Nanowrimo, the first camp, which they have a camp and then November, I said that I'd write 10,000 words, and so I wrote 10,000 words and made the story. And the second one, I decided I could write 20,000 words, and I made the second story. And the third one, which is November, is 50,000. So the third story is 50,000. So I found characters I like and just kept moving them through the stories. So when you read it, it's not one mystery, it's 3 separate mysteries.
But they have the same characters?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
Yes.
all right. Okay. So it's almost like reading Nancy Drew then. So you've got those familiar characters in
Yes.
different situations. Okay.
Yeah.
We should talk a little bit about Nanowrimo, because Peoria Public Library has, over the past few years, usually participated in that, and the way we participate is offer a place for people to come and write, bring their laptop, have some coffee, be in a room with other writers, which is the support of all that. Have reference material if they need to go look up something, but I don't remember. What does Nanowrimo stand for? National
Novel Writing
Month. Yeah, National Novel Writing Month.
Yes.
And it's surprising how many people participate in that, either
It is.
because they're established writers, they want to do it, or they just want to try it, and it's a focused way to say, okay, it's November, I'm going to do this, and they do it.
This was my first real foray into writing, because I went to back to school late. I went back to Bradley late and didn't even start until I was 49, and it took 12 years to get through it. And when I got done with my BS in English, it's like, what now?
Yeah.
So I thought, well, writing, I've always liked to write, and my concentration is creative writing. So I found the group, or a friend found the group for me, and I started going to it and meeting like people and learning things, and it's very exciting to have a goal and to have something done. So putting this into book form was something you always kind of dream about, and now it's done, So
Yeah.
now the next one.
Yeah, ready to start. Have you started another one already?
July 1st is the next camp, if people want to do it. In fact, you can go online to Camp Nanowrimo and sign up and pledge how many words you want to do, and then it's got a graph that shows how you're doing, so you have to write this many words. It's it's
Is
learning
that an
to be-
online camp or a camp you're going
Yes.
to?
Yeah, it's an online camp.
Okay.
So it's easy to see how you're doing and what you need to do and keeps you on task, which is something a lot of writers, myself included, if you don't, I mean, you're never going to have the perfect table and the perfect, light
View
and the
and-
perfect, not the cat bothering you and that kind of stuff. So this is nice. And then a lot of times the groups will schedule meeting times when people can go and sit in a room and write. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
it's
Very
fun.
nice. Yeah, and I'm sure that Peoria Public Library will do the November thing again. And we don't do much, but I mean, the library's always there for people who want a place to write. You can probably even reserve one of our little study rooms for an hour or two at a time. But even just finding a quiet corner in one of our 5 locations is easy enough to do with Wi-Fi and having, we have electrical outlets on all of our study tables now, so. You
They're
can
very
bring your
nice.
laptop and be able to go for it. I suppose there's some people even writing on a tablet with a keyboard, but
Sure.
that could be hard to do.
I've done it before, but I'm better on the big laptop. The only thing I really ran into was something that I never really realized with writing book is how many edits there are. And you think, oh, it's just because you write wrong. Like you can't spell, which I can't. But the thing was going from one computer to another and one word program to another program, and I found that when I was on my laptop, it would squish all the words together when I transferred to another computer, and so it was, that's a lot of work on it. So it's
technical.
I would say pick one and stay with it, and then you'll be okay. But it's going from your work computer, your home computer, your
So you're talking about the formatting when you do
formatting, yes.
self-publishing,
Yeah.
yeah. Because someone who's actually sending it off to a publisher, that's all going to be taken care of for them. But if you're doing self-publishing, then you do have to worry about all your formatting, your typesetting, and that's a whole different ball game all by itself. And there's plenty of information out there, which you can get at the library, about what's easy to read and what formats you should use and that kind of thing. So.
I was lucky I have a real tech-savvy friend, and she did a lot of the formatting. But even in that, it was edited 9 times.
Wow.
And some of those are hanging quotes. I mean, unbelievable stuff. And spell check is wonderful, except that, floored and flooded can be pass as a word and totally mean something different.
Oh, yeah. That's a big, ever since spell check came in, I've noticed that kids coming right out of school, it's very difficult to get them to actually proofread something because they've been trained to look for that red squiggly line, whereas I tend to ignore the red squiggly line, and sometimes I should pay attention. But that's just my many years as a copy editor just coming into play, that I don't look at red squiggly lines when I should. So can you tell us anything about your characters without giving away the mystery?
Well,
Murder in the Library?
I borrow from things I know. So if the woman kind of sounds like me, she kind of is, except my life's not nearly that exciting. And I borrowed my daughters, Amber and TJ, and TJ was like, cool, Mom, let's do this. And Amber was like, oh, Mom. But she came around. She's okay. But if people know my children, they'll recognize them in there, because it's very much like them. I started out writing it just for fun and to entertain my family and friends. So then when it got to actually this stage, there were a few things I had to change and a few people's names I had to take out.
I had to take out and redo.
I did put a disclaimer that said if your name is in here, it's because you have a really cool name. So.
Well, that covers a lot of sins.
I know, right?
Exactly. Put your name in there because it's a really cool name.
It's a cool name.
Okay, so you did self-publish this, but how does one go about doing self-publishing?
I went through Amazon.com, or CreateSpace is the name of it, and it's very important to do your own formatting. They do have options where you can pay to have somebody create the covers and create the. With this book, a friend did the cover, and with my other book, Amber did the cover, my daughter. So that saved me a lot of money. So I didn't put much money into it, but a lot of time. And I know Natalie reformatted and did it, and we'd put it in there, we'd look, and then it'd approve it, and then it'd say, nah, this is outside the line. And
yeah, don't like that.
So it's a real study in details.
Yeah.
So.
And so it's called
CreateSpace. One word. Create.
One word.
capital S.
And then is this the kind of thing that they're printing on demand? When somebody
Yes.
orders it, they print one on demand?
Yes.
Okay.
But it's so fast, which I was shocked at, because when I sent it, I could have it in a couple of days.
Oh,
So
nice.
I guess once they have the file, it's no problem. Once
Yeah.
everything's approved and everything.
Yeah.
So of course, my family, they all have to have one now.
Yeah. Nice. Is it available as an ebook, like to download for
Not
Kindle?
yet.
Or?
That's the next option, but because we saved it in a PDF file, it's not available for that type. So all the files have to be converted. So we'll see.
So
we'll see if that
another
happens.
challenge. What would you recommend people do if they look into what all the file types are before you start? I mean, is there one file type you can do for both, or do you have to do it 2 different ways?
I'm not that savvy. That's why I have
Okay.
someone to help. So
Somebody
if
helps
you're doing
you.
like that, find somebody who can really help you. I'm not sure. I know that the PDF you do so it can't change, so it cannot shift or whatever. But in Kindles, they actually do shift and change everything, so it's
Yes.
got to be a different way. And
Yeah.
there are services, but it's like $79 or something to have those files converted. But there are some free options online, and we're looking at those too. So
Oh,
just
neat.
for fun.
Very neat. All right. And when you do your storytelling, a lot of times you're telling old stories. And have you ever told any of your stories that you've written, or do you keep your writing stories separate from when you do your verbal stories?
The second book I wrote, Roasting Marshmallows on the Manifold, which comes from the fact, heaven shall be a bonfire of all the cars that ever gave us problems on earth, and we shall roast marshmallows, which is right from my sister Jeannie's mouth. And these are family stories of cars, and I have done these for storytellings. It started when I went to, and I've done children's groups, a lot of children's groups, a lot of libraries. I went to an adult group, and I walked in the door after having a flat tire and all this kind of crazy stuff, and I said, let me tell you a story. And that's how I told it, was this is what happened to me today. And so that's the way the stories are written, how our family dealt with all these terrible cars, and my dad and his, if it doesn't work, hit it with a hammer, and my brother who said, Linda, just buy a new one, all those kind of things. And some of the titles are like, Officer, there's a cat in my engine. And
Been there with that one.
Yes. Oh, that was pretty scary. Cat lived. I'd like to tell people that. No cats were hurt
Yeah,
in
we
this.
had
Yeah.
we had a cat that lived too. It was my daughter's birthday. She was a cheerleader for the first time in grade school. Big bow on the head. Wasn't that excited about this whole thing, but she was. So I'm trying to get her to school for this big cheerleading thing on her birthday. Start up the car. Horrible noises out of the engine. Car won't start. I don't remember how we got there. I think we had to call somebody to get a ride, and she was late and got in trouble. But the cat did live.
Yes.
But the whole engine was covered with all cat fur, and
It's a scary thing.
it was awful.
I was leaving Bradley at the time where I worked to go to my next job, and I looked up and there's nothing in there. Oh, thank goodness. And then I see 2 little eyeballs down in the greasy thing. It's like, oh my gosh, what do I do? And so I call everybody I know, and nobody knows what to do except my daughter, Amber, who says, call the campus police, Mom. So policeman comes walking over there, and I'm thinking, this is not funny, and this is serious. There's a little kitten in my And he goes, oh, I hope it's okay. He got down there, he goes, oh, I don't think you're wrong. Oh my gosh, there's a cat in the engine. And I said, I've been telling you there's a cat in the engine. So he's going, I don't know, what do we do? I don't know, should we pull the engine? I don't know. I've got to get to my job. And I call the second job, and I said, I'm going to be late. There's a cat in my engine. And the guy goes, oh, that's a new one. Yeah, okay. No, there really is. And so finally a guy comes over from the sorority house. He goes, what you looking at? There's a cat in the engine. Really? There's a cat in the engine. So he comes in and he looks. He goes, oh, I can get it. And he takes his arm and he sticks it down in there. He gets it. He goes, okay, I got the cat. And we go, yeah. He goes, but my arm's stuck. And I go, your arm's stuck? Oh my gosh, now we are going to call, have to pull the engine, and who do we call? And I have no money. And he goes, okay, so he gets it out and pull this out, and a little greasy thing going. So I asked later the policeman, what did you do with the cat? And he said, I named it Monty. And I go, Monty? And he goes, well, you have a Monte Carlo. I go, okay. He said my friend was dying for a cat, and so she loved it.
Aww. Yeah, the
So those
last
are my
cat in the
stories.
engine I know ended up being named Popeye because it was a farm cat, and somehow it hung on and rode in the
Oh.
car all the way to Popeye's chicken. So they felt so bad that they took it in and named it Popeye. So that was the last cat in the engine story I heard.
Well, this one I was driving, I hear this meow, meow. It's like pull
What
over
is
on
it?
the side. So,
Yeah.
so we have lots of those stories. We have stories like TJ, well, Mom, at least you never had to tell a cop you had a kid in the trunk. It's like, what? Why are you telling me this while I'm driving? So that story's pretty good too.
Oh.
We have a lot of those stories.
How many stories do you think are in your Roasting Marshmallows book?
About a dozen. You know, it was originally a project that I did for Bradley in creative writing. I started doing it, and one of the Dr. Palkiel who was there, he said, "What do you want to write about?" And people said, "Oh, I want to write about nature, and I want to write about people with terrible problems and abuse and everything." Comes to me, he says, "What do you want to write about?" I said, "Well, we've had a lot of really bad cars." And I'm looking at all these younger, because everybody else in the class is like 30 years younger than me, and he goes, "Car stories. The world needs more car stories." So I wrote the car stories. So I did it for him, and I did it for and did more and more. So, and my family kept saying, "When are you going to give us those car stories?" Because they're in there. There's a chapter, pages on truisms and quotes from my brothers and sisters. We had
About cars.
things happen about cars, yeah. So,
Yeah.
and I think most people can relate. Well, maybe not so much now because they have computer chips and you just call the OnStar and they come and get it. But before it was open it up, pull the carburetor,
Do all that
do all that stuff. yeah.
mess. Well, back when you could fix it yourself.
Yes, I
now
wouldn't-
you
I
can't
wouldn't
fix it
attempt.
yourself.
Now I have OnStar.
Oh. There's a cat in my engine, OnStar.
Get my cat.
There must be some, maybe they can make a sound or something that pulls the cat out, gets the cat to leave the
I
engine.
know, right? You pay
That's
enough.
what they should do. So now, that one, Roasting Marshmallows, was published first?
About the same time. I did
Oh,
this
all right.
one, and while we were working on this, my friend Natalie says, "We need to do another one," because she was in edit mode, and I said, "Well, I have these files already," and shoo, did them. So why not, huh?
Yeah.
In for
yeah,
one, out for two, yeah.
Yeah. So what's the price on your books?
This one is
Murder in the Library?
$18.95, I think,
Okay,
and this
18.
one's $12.95.
Okay, so for $12.95, you can have a great collection of car stories to read on your vacation while you're not breaking down.
I
or
think
you're
when you
calling
read it, you're going to
OnStar.
say, "I had a car like, oh yeah, I had a car like that." Maybe not our kids, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. Some of the car stories I can remember, cars patched together, or
Yes.
back when boys would get a job at the gas station or the grocery store and save up $500 and buy,
$200 cars.
yeah, those are
Lots
the
of 'em.
cars with the stories.
We called them the in and out cars because you'd put the transmission fluid in before you went to work, and after work you put in another one to go home. And I asked the guy if you could put a bowl under there and catch it and put it back in, and he really just,
I didn't think that would
not a
work.
good idea.
Yeah. My dad had a great story about cars when he was a teenager. He lived, this was in south side of Chicago in the 1920s, and he and 6 of his other buddies pooled their money and bought a Model T, and it would only turn left. So if you were going down the road and you wanted to turn right, you had to do a complete circle to the left to go right.
My kids would say I do that, except I only like to turn right.
Oh, yeah, yeah. My mother went through a stage of life where she would only turn
Yeah.
right. It'd go all the way around a block to get where you were going, so you didn't have to turn left.
Either that or a stoplight, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a story in there, too, about how bad I was at driver's ed, so you'll understand.
Ah, yes, yes. Oh, boy. Driver's ed was a long time ago.
That was horrible.
I don't think they do it the same anymore.
They do it a lot less, I know. I think my
They
daughter's
teach
only
them a
had
lot
about
less,
4.
but then your parents have to drive them
Yeah, that's the idea.
forever and ever and ever. But you can't start until they're older, so that's complicated.
No, I always figured with my second daughter, she must have been driving about a year before she took driver's ed, because she's really good. She still is really good.
Well, there's good drivers and there's bad
Oh,
drivers.
yeah.
So what's your next one going to be on?
Well, you know, it starts today. So I do have another story partway done with these same characters from Murder in the Library.
Oh, okay.
And this one will take place with summer reading theme.
Oh,
So,
all right.
and those of us who work in libraries know that's a big deal.
Yeah,
So.
yes, and of course this year has been Read to the Rhythm.
Yeah, oh,
Pretty much
I love the
statewide.
T-shirts.
Yeah,
it's really
they're,
nice.
They're
really
nice. A lot of musical programming, a lot of great stuff, but yeah.
It's a great opportunity. I
Yeah.
love it.
I think what people don't understand about summer reading and some of our other reading programs at Peoria Public Library is that they're for all ages.
Right.
And they seem to think they're just for kids. And I think that may happen to you as a storyteller too, where people think storytelling is only for children. But
No.
storytelling is such a great, that goes back to the beginning of human history,
Oh, yeah.
telling of stories. And it used to be how our history and our genealogy and everything else was carried on. How did you get started as a storyteller?
I come from a family of storytellers. I think that's the big thing. I was a theater major in my first life, and then went back to school. But anyway, I was a theater major and loved libraries, and I decided it's one or the other. I could be an actress or I could work in a library, and of course I didn't become the next Katharine Hepburn. So when I came home, I went right into libraries and was lucky enough to get into storytelling, so it's like, the best of both worlds.
Yeah, that's a great way to do it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And there's storytellers and there's storytellers. We have, at the library, so many people come and go, but so many storytellers add in some music, or they add in this, or they add in that, or puppets, or there's all sorts of different things. But I've always enjoyed your storytelling because it's just purely human and from the heart, and it's just you, and enchant people. So that's a great
really
thing.
Sweet.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is the crowd. And if I have someone play off me, it's over the top. I can be as silly as I want. But it's so important with the stories. And like even the Marshmallow stories, it's like if you don't tell these stories to people, then they're gone.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
your father's story with the car and all this kind of stuff. If you don't tell that, it's gone. And that person just kind of loses that part of their personality.
Yeah.
So that was one of the reasons of writing. And that's why I encourage everybody to tell those stories, to ask those stories and write them down.
Yeah, write them down. And there's such a strong interest in genealogy these days.
Yes.
And I think that there's been a lot of encouragement that I've seen in the last year or so about including stories like the Model T in a genealogy, and what do you know? And there's this interest in the genetic genealogy now with the DNA, and it's interesting to correspond with people, and people are finding distant cousins, but then to share family stories and what came down in your family. And I've had this experience myself. What came down in your family, what came down in our branch of the family. And sometimes I'm finding the defining thing about that is whether you're descended from the older child or the younger child. Like I've met a third cousin. She's descended from a child who was much, much younger than the man I'm descended from, even though she's older than I am.
Right.
But, we actually are third cousins and have only corresponded via email and, on Ancestry and that kind of thing. But her version of life is very different than the one I was given through several generations, just because his mother had died by that time, whereas as my ancestor had his mother for most of his life. This younger one was raised by a sister and moved from house to house to house. Didn't remember much of the things that came down in my family as being very stressful, because that was all over with, and he was apparently well treated and happy with his other brother and his sister, living with an old sister who was much, much older, and her husband. So.
Well, my daughter Amber works in genealogy.
Yes.
And she has told me more stories than I ever knew. And by going through the records and finding it, it's so great. And in fact, they're doing some programs on genealogy this summer or in the fall.
Yes, there are quite a few out there, and they're presenting some things at Illinois Library Association. The other great thing that's happening is they've found, Amber and another person that works with that, have found ways to go into the schools and do a classroom project that involves writing and math and those types of things that meet all those goals we have now. We can't just learn anymore. We have to meet a goal. So it will meet the goal, but also give children the chance to understand, explore that history, because, my favorite quote is always, if you don't know history, you're bound to repeat it.
Right.
And I think we're seeing a lot of that now, where you just wish people would come and hear true history and stop trying to rewrite it or think you can demolish it and it will be gone.
Well,
And then-
even in fiction, when I was writing this, I turned to my daughter and said, I need to know what happened on these years. I need a genealogy
Yeah.
chart of these people. And she was able to give me that basis, because otherwise they are just
yeah.
fluff. They're not solid characters. You've got to
Exactly.
develop them, and that genealogy made all the difference.
Yeah, it does. And the other thing that's fun and that you can do at the library is whether you're writing a story and you're getting the research about what's going on at that time, is also when you're looking into genealogy, you can find out what music were people were listening
Right.
to,
She had
what
to give
food
me
were
that,
they
too.
eating, what clothes were they wearing, and all of that for me has always been very enchanting.
Right.
To learn more about people and their lives. And the same thing goes for artwork or music. If you're studying an artist and you look at their painting, you might look at that painting and go, well, that means nothing to me. But then if you can put it together with what life was like, what was happening in the world at that time, can really give you a different insight. Just as the artwork we look at now, you probably understand it because of the world we live in, and we know that we're going to the drive-through at McDonald's unless we're going to the healthy store and only eating
Right.
kale, and we know that's going on. So you can understand what people surround themselves with, this work they created. So, well, Linda, we're out of time already. So
Well, thank you for having me
thank
today.
you so much for
Appreciate
coming on. I'd love to have our local authors and see what you're all up to. And we'll look forward to reading your book and hopefully having you back at Peoria Public Library pretty soon.
it. Thanks, Tricia.
Thanks for watching, and we'll be back next week with information, please. We've got some exciting announcements about Peoria Reads, our One City, One Book program coming up. We have lots of back-to-school programs coming. And of course, this fall we have our great What's Your Story 135th anniversary celebration, and you can call or look on our website to find out about that. See you next week on Information, Please.